"Don't look there," warned the Apache woman. Yet the mountain man stared and froze in shock. The sun was just beginning to rise over the jagged peaks of the southwestern mountains, painting the canyon walls in shades of gold and red. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of pine and the faint, earthy smell of the river that wound through the valley below. The mountain man moved carefully along the narrow trail, his boots crunching softly over the loose stones. He had been traveling for days, and his body was tired, but his mind was alert. Out here in the wilderness, every sound mattered. The call of a distant hawk, the rustle of leaves, even the whisper of the wind could be a warning. Beside him walked the Apache woman, her movements graceful and precise. She seemed to glide over the rocks rather than step on them. Her eyes, dark and deep, scanned every inch of the trail, every shadow and every bend in the canyon. There was an air of calm around her, but the mountain man could sense her tension. She was always alert, always watching for danger, and he had learned not to ignore her instincts. "Don't look there," she warned suddenly, her voice firm but low, her gaze fixed on a narrow crevice in the rock ahead. The mountain man paused, raising his eyebrows. "There's nothing there but rocks," he said. He trusted her knowledge of the land, but curiosity burned inside him. He had seen many things in his years of wandering these mountains, but he had never met anyone like her, someone who seemed to know the land as if it were a living thing, as if it spoke to her in a language only she could understand. She shook her head, her long black hair catching the sunlight. "It is not for you to see. The spirits watch over this place. If you look, you may awaken something you do not understand." The mountain man chuckled softly, but he could not hide the shiver that ran down his spine. There was something in her tone that made the hair on the back of his neck stand up. He had spent enough nights under the open sky to know when someone was serious, and she was always serious. They had been traveling together for several days, crossing dry washes and climbing steep ridges. He had hired her as a guide because the land was unfamiliar, and rumors told of a hidden trading post deep in the mountains that had long been abandoned. Supplies could be found there, food, tools, maybe even treasures left behind by travelers who had disappeared long ago. The mountain man was drawn by the promise of discovery, but he had not expected to encounter someone so connected to the land itself. The Apache woman's eyes flicked back toward the crevice. "You must trust me," she said. "Some places are not meant for human eyes. Some secrets are kept for a reason." He nodded slowly, but his curiosity grew stronger. He had always been a man who sought knowledge, who wanted to see and understand things others left alone. The warning only made him more intrigued. He could see the faint outline of the crevice, dark and mysterious, almost inviting. As they walked, she told him stories about the land. She spoke of the mountains as if they were old friends, recounting the names of hidden springs, the tracks of animals, and the spirits that lived in the stones and trees. Her voice was soft but carried authority, and the mountain man listened, feeling a growing respect for her knowledge. He had never met anyone who could speak so vividly of the land, who could make it come alive in his mind, just through words. But still, the shadow of that crevice lingered in his thoughts. Every time he tried to focus on her stories, his eyes drifted back to it. Something about it called to him, an unexplainable pull. He shook his head, trying to focus. "We should set up camp soon," he said. "The sun is high, and the canyon will cool quickly at night. We don't want to be caught in the dark here." She nodded, but did not take her eyes off the rocks. "Yes, we will rest soon, but not yet. We are close." They continued along the trail, moving slowly and carefully. The mountain man noticed the way she paused at certain points, examining the ground, the rocks, the plants. She was looking for signs, tracks of animals, signs of other travelers, warnings from the land itself. He tried to learn from her, but it was difficult. Her knowledge seemed almost magical, an instinct he could not match. Finally, as the afternoon sun climbed higher, they reached a small plateau overlooking the valley. The view was breathtaking. The canyon stretched out before them, jagged and wild, and far below, the river sparkled in the sunlight. The mountain man felt a thrill of excitement. This was what he had come for: the untouched wilderness, the promise of discovery, and the chance to witness something extraordinary. But even as he admired the view, he felt the weight of her warning. The Apache woman stood beside him, her eyes scanning the horizon. "You see that ridge?" she said, pointing toward a cluster of rocks far off. "Beyond it lies something that should not be disturbed. Remember my words." He nodded, trying to suppress the urge to look closer. He respected her, but he was also a man of action, a man who had faced danger many times and survived. The thought of finding something hidden, something forgotten, was too tempting. As the day wore on, they began to set up a small camp. The mountain man gathered firewood while she carefully arranged their supplies. There was a rhythm to their work, a silent understanding between them. He could feel the tension in the air, a mixture of anticipation and caution. That night, as they sat by the fire, she told him more stories. She spoke of spirits that roamed the mountains, of ancestors who protected certain places, and of the balance between humans and the land. Her words were filled with wisdom, and the mountain man listened intently, feeling a deep sense of humility. He realized that this journey was not just about discovery. It was about understanding, about respecting something larger than himself. Yet, as he stared into the flames, his thoughts drifted back to the crevice she had warned him about. He could not shake the feeling that it held a secret, a story that had been hidden for a long time. The fire crackled and shadows danced across the canyon walls, creating shapes that seemed almost alive. He felt a strange mixture of fear and excitement. The Apache woman watched him carefully. She knew the temptation that curiosity brought, and she could see the struggle in his eyes. "Rest now," she said gently. "Tomorrow we continue, but you must promise me. Do not look there. Wait until I say it is safe." He nodded again, though inside, the battle raged. He respected her. He truly did, but the desire to uncover the unknown was powerful. As he lay down on his bedroll, staring at the stars above, he wondered what lay hidden in that shadowy crevice. The mountains were quiet, but the mountain man could feel the weight of their presence. Something was watching, something ancient and patient, and though he tried to push it from his mind, he knew that tomorrow the pull of the unknown would be even stronger. He drifted to sleep with the echo of her warning in his ears, a whisper carried on the wind, "Don't look there." Morning came slowly in the canyon, the sunlight spilling over the jagged peaks in soft golden rays. The mountain man stirred on his bedroll, the memory of the Apache woman's warning echoing in his mind. "Don't look there." The words seemed to hum through his thoughts, a warning and a challenge, all at once. The fire had burned down to embers overnight, leaving a faint warmth in the cool morning air. He stretched, rubbing the stiffness from his shoulders and feeling the ache in his legs from the climb the day before. The Apache woman was already awake, sitting on a flat rock, her eyes scanning the horizon as if she could read the canyon itself. She noticed him stirring and gestured toward the narrow path ahead.
"We move at first light," she said quietly. Her voice was calm, but there was a tension in her stance, a tightness around her eyes that betrayed worry.
The mountain man nodded. He had promised to follow her guidance, but curiosity was a heavy weight in his chest. All night he had thought about the crevice she had warned him not to look at. It was just a dark opening in the rock, yet somehow It seemed alive, as if it were calling to him. He shook his head, trying to focus on the trail. "We'll follow the path today," he said, forcing himself to sound obedient. They moved carefully along the trail, their footsteps echoing faintly in the quiet morning. The mountain man noticed small tracks in the dirt, animal prints, delicate and precise. He followed them with his eyes, studying the way they curved and disappeared into the shadows. She walked beside him silently, her own gaze sharp, always alert for signs he could not see. Hours passed as they climbed higher into the canyon. The sun rose, burning away the morning chill and painting the canyon walls in bright oranges and reds. They paused occasionally to rest, drinking water from the small river that wound through the valley below, careful not to disturb the fragile balance of the land. The Apache woman moved with a quiet confidence, gathering small branches and stones, pointing out edible plants, and speaking softly about the animals that roamed the canyon. At last they reached a narrow ledge that overlooked a deep, shadowed gorge. The mountain man froze, his breath catching in his throat. There, at the far end of the ledge, was the crevice. The shadows inside were darker than he had imagined, almost black, as if they absorbed the sunlight around them. His heart pounded, and a strange chill ran down his spine. The Apache woman noticed him stopping. "You see it?" she said softly, almost a whisper. Her eyes were sharp and serious. "I told you not to look. Turn away. It is not safe. Some places are not meant for the eyes of the living." The mountain man felt a pull he could not resist. He knew it was dangerous, that she was warning him for a reason, yet something about the dark opening called to him. Slowly, almost against his will, he took a step closer. The crevice yawned before him, and he could see shadows shifting inside, as if the walls themselves were moving. His eyes widened, and he froze in shock. Inside the crevice he saw bones, not scattered bones, but carefully arranged skeletons, their positions deliberate, almost ceremonial. Some were curled as if in sleep, others stretched out in a silent plea. There were remnants of cloth, old and faded, and small objects, carved stones, feathers, and beads, placed around them with care. His stomach churned. The sight was both horrifying and fascinating. It was a burial site, sacred and untouched for decades. The Apache woman's face grew pale, and she stepped closer, placing a firm hand on his arm. "I told you not to look. You must leave this place at once. These are the spirits of my people. You cannot disturb them, or you will bring misfortune upon yourself." The mountain man swallowed hard, his mind racing. He had seen many things in his life, wild animals, storms, and treacherous trails, but nothing like this. The care and respect in the arrangement of the bones and artifacts made him realize the depth of what he was seeing. This was not just a place of death. It was a place of remembrance, of history and memory, preserved in stone and earth. He stepped back, feeling guilt mixed with fear. I didn't mean to disrespect," he stammered. His hands shook, and he looked away, realizing how close he had come to violating something sacred. The Apache woman's eyes softened slightly, though her expression remained tense. "You must understand," she said, her voice steady but filled with warning. "Some things are not for the living to touch. Some places hold the pain and sorrow of many generations. To enter carelessly is to invite trouble, not just for yourself, but for those who follow." The mountain man nodded, humbled. He had always thought of the wilderness as a challenge to conquer, a mystery to unravel. But this was different. The canyon was alive with memory, and the crevice held stories that demanded respect, not exploration. They sat in silence for a while, watching the sunlight play over the rocks. The Apache woman gathered small branches and began a quiet ritual, placing them near the edge of the crevice as an offering. She muttered words in her own language, a song of protection and remembrance. The mountain man watched, feeling a mixture of awe and remorse. He realized that he had underestimated the weight of history, the sacredness of the land, and the wisdom of the woman who guided him. As the day wore on, they moved carefully past the crevice, following a narrow trail that hugged the canyon walls. The mountain man kept glancing back, but he did not dare look into the shadows again. The memory of what he had seen stayed with him, a heavy reminder that curiosity could be dangerous if not tempered with respect. The Apache woman noticed his unease. "It is natural to be curious," she said gently, "but curiosity must be balanced with caution. Some doors, once opened, cannot be closed." He nodded, understanding for the first time that his desire to explore could have consequences far beyond his imagination. The canyon was vast, and the shadows seemed to stretch endlessly, hiding secrets that demanded reverence. As evening approached, they found a small clearing to set up camp. The mountain man collected firewood while she arranged their supplies and prepared a simple meal. The canyon grew quiet as the sun dipped below the horizon, and the first stars appeared in the clear night sky. They ate in silence, the mountain man's mind still replaying the image of the crevice and the bones. The Apache woman sat beside him, her gaze on the fire. "You have learned an important lesson today," she said softly. "The land speaks in many ways, sometimes through animals, sometimes through plants, and sometimes through places like the one you saw. You must listen, and you must respect what you do not fully understand." The mountain man nodded, the weight of his experience settling over him. He realized that exploration was not just about finding hidden treasures or forgotten places. It was about understanding the world and the people who had shaped it. The canyon had tested him, and he had learned that wisdom often lay in restraint, in knowing when to look and when to turn away. As they lay down to sleep under the stars, the mountain man felt a strange sense of peace mixed with lingering unease. The crevice remained in his thoughts, a silent, shadowed place filled with history, memory, and warning. He had seen what should not be disturbed, and the experience would stay with him forever. The Apache woman's words echoed in his mind, blending with the whisper of the wind through the canyon. Some places are not meant for the eyes of the living. And he knew, deep in his heart, that this was a truth he would carry with him, not just in the mountains, but in every journey he undertook from that day forward. The next morning the sun rose slowly over the canyon, sending beams of golden light through the jagged peaks. The mountain man awoke before the Apache woman, his mind restless. The image of the crevice and the carefully arranged bones haunted him. He knew he had been warned not to look, not to disturb, but the pull of the unknown was strong. It was not greed or malice that drove him. It was curiosity, the same curiosity that had led him to explore hidden caves, lost trails, and forgotten ruins all his life. He dressed quickly, trying to shake off the heaviness in his chest. The Apache woman was already awake, gathering herbs and checking the trail ahead. She glanced at him, her dark eyes sharp and knowing. "You are thinking about it," she said softly, not as a question, but as a statement. He nodded slowly, unable to hide his thoughts. "I cannot stop thinking about what I saw yesterday," he admitted. "It is like the place is calling me, asking to be understood." She sighed, a sound of both frustration and concern. "Some places are not meant to be understood by those who walk among the living," she said. "The spirits of those who came before linger there. They watch, they protect, To enter carelessly is to invite misfortune. The mountain man listened, but his mind was already made up. He promised himself he would tread carefully. He would not disrespect the place, but he needed to see more, to understand the story hidden in the shadows of the crevice. As they packed their supplies and continued along the trail, the canyon seemed quieter than usual. Even the birds appeared to move with caution, their calls softer, the breeze carrying only whispers. The mountain man felt a strange tension in the air, as if the canyon itself was holding its breath. After a few hours of careful climbing, they reached a narrow ledge that ran along the side of a steep rock wall. The crevice was just ahead, partially hidden by shadows and a cluster of large boulders. The Apache woman paused, placing a firm hand on his shoulder. "If you step forward, you must promise to be careful. One misstep, and the spirits may not forgive you. Respect what you see, and take nothing from this place."
He nodded solemnly.
"I promise," he said, though his heart raced with anticipation. Slowly they approached the crevice. The mountain man peered inside, careful to avoid touching anything. He could see the arrangement of bones and artifacts more clearly now. There were small carvings in the rocks, faded but still visible, showing animals, people, and patterns that seemed to tell a story. Feathers, beads, and tiny stones were placed with care, as if each item held meaning beyond his understanding. He crouched slightly, studying the carvings and the objects. The Apache woman remained behind him, murmuring words of caution and protection. Her presence reminded him to tread lightly, to observe rather than interfere. The mountain man felt a deep respect for the care with which the site had been maintained. It was not just a burial ground. It was a record of life, loss, and memory. As he moved closer, he noticed something unusual. Among the artifacts, there was a small bundle of papers, yellowed and worn with age. Carefully, he reached out and picked them up, examining them without disturbing the other items. The papers contained drawings and symbols, seemingly a combination of storytelling and record-keeping. Some depicted scenes of hunting, others showed families and ceremonies. He realized that this was a window into the lives of people who had lived long before him, people whose history had been preserved in this sacred place. The Apache woman's voice broke his concentration. "Do not touch more than you must," she warned. "These are not for the hands of strangers." He lowered the bundle, feeling a mix of guilt and awe. "I understand," he said quietly. "I only wanted to see their story, not take it." Hours passed as he studied the carvings and the papers. Each symbol, each artifact told a part of a story that was larger than he could fully comprehend. He saw scenes of survival and hardship, moments of celebration and acts of bravery. He imagined the people who had lived and died here, who had placed each item with care and reverence. The mountain man felt a deep connection to them, as if their lives were reaching across time to touch his own. The Apache woman watched him closely, her expression softening. She understood his desire to learn, to connect, but she also knew the dangers of lingering too long in a sacred place.
"You must leave soon," she said gently.
The spirits will not always tolerate the living in their presence. Respect and knowledge are not gained without understanding the limits. He nodded, reluctantly setting the papers back in the bundle and stepping away from the crevice. As he did, he noticed a small opening at the back of the shadowed area, partially hidden by rocks. It was narrow, but he could see movement inside, shadows that did not match the shapes of the stones. A chill ran down his spine. "Do not go there," the Apache woman warned, her voice firm. "That part of the place is forbidden. Even I do not enter it lightly." "Ah!" The mountain man hesitated. His curiosity flared again, but this time he remembered her warnings. The last time he had ignored her advice, he had felt guilt and fear. He forced himself to step back, breathing deeply to calm his racing heart. "Good," she said, placing a hand on his arm. "You have learned well. Respect is not the absence of curiosity. It is the understanding that some knowledge must be approached with care and reverence."
As they moved away from the crevice, the mountain man reflected on what he had seen.
He realized that the stories of the people who had lived here were not meant to be taken lightly. Each item, each carving, was a piece of their history, a fragment of their lives preserved for those who respected the land. He felt honored to have glimpsed it and humbled by the responsibility that came with that knowledge. They continued along the trail, the canyon stretching endlessly around them. The sun began to dip toward the horizon, casting long shadows that made the rocks glow with deep reds and oranges. The mountain man kept glancing back at the crevice, but he did not look too long. The image of the bones and artifacts was burned into his memory, a lesson in humility and respect. As evening fell, they found a small clearing to set up camp once more. The mountain man built a fire while the Apache woman gathered herbs and prepared a simple meal. The canyon was quiet, the only sounds the gentle rush of the distant river and the whisper of the wind through the rocks. They ate in silence for a while, each lost in thought. The mountain man finally spoke. "I think I understand now," he said softly. "It is not just about seeing the past. It is about respecting it, about knowing that some stories are alive, even if the people are gone." The Apache woman nodded, her eyes reflecting the firelight. "Yes," she said, "and you must carry this lesson with you wherever you go. Not all knowledge is yours to take. Some must be honored and preserved, and some must be left alone." The mountain man felt a sense of peace settle over him, though a lingering curiosity remained. He knew there were more secrets in the canyon, more stories hidden in the shadows, but he also understood that discovery came with responsibility. The crevice had taught him that knowledge and respect must go hand in hand. That night, as he lay beneath the stars, the mountain man thought about the people whose lives had been recorded in that sacred place. He imagined their struggles, their triumphs, and their care for the land that had sustained them. He realized that his journey was not just a physical one through the mountains, but a journey of understanding, humility, and connection to the past. The Apache woman's words echoed in his mind once more. Respect and knowledge are not gained without understanding the limits. He drifted to sleep with a deep sense of reverence, knowing that the lessons he had learned would guide him for the rest of his life. The next morning, the mountain man awoke with a strange feeling in his chest. The canyon was unusually quiet, almost too quiet. Even the river below, which normally gurgled and sparkled in the sunlight, seemed subdued, its waters flowing slower, heavier. He rubbed his eyes and shook his head, wondering if the strange heaviness was his imagination. The memory of the sacred crevice from the previous day lingered in his mind, and despite his promise to respect the site, he could not escape the sense that something had shifted. The Apache woman was already awake, sitting on a flat rock and watching the horizon. She noticed his unease immediately. "You feel it, do you not?" she asked quietly, her voice calm but firm. "The land speaks. It is disturbed, and not by you alone." "Disturbed? I did not touch anything. I only observed." Her eyes met his, sharp and unwavering. Even observation can awaken what should remain at rest. Curiosity must be tempered with respect, and the spirits here are sensitive. They notice, they remember. The mountain man felt a chill run down his spine. He had always believed that courage and knowledge were enough to navigate the wild, but now he realized there were forces beyond his understanding, forces that demanded reverence. and care. They packed their small camp and began walking along the canyon trail. But the mountain man noticed subtle changes in the landscape. Shadows seemed longer than they should have been, bending in ways that confused his eyes. Rocks that had looked stable the day before now seemed ready to shift, and the usual sounds of wildlife were muted. Even the wind seemed to carry a warning, brushing against his face with an almost deliberate force. As they neared a narrow bend in the trail, the mountain man paused. He had been walking carefully, yet he stumbled over a small stone and almost fell. The Apache woman's hand shot out instinctively, steadying him. "You must pay attention," she said. "The canyon tests those who do not heed its warning. You were close yesterday, closer than you knew. The spirits are restless, and they will remind you if necessary." He swallowed hard, feeling the weight of her words. Something in the canyon was watching, waiting, and he was painfully aware that his actions had consequences. They pressed on, moving slowly as the afternoon sun climbed higher. The mountain man felt a constant tension in his chest, an awareness that every step mattered. He kept his eyes on the trail, but his mind wandered to the sacred crevice, to the bones, the carvings, and the artifacts. He wondered what would have happened if he had lingered longer or touched something he should not have. The thought filled him with unease. By mid-afternoon, they reached a small clearing near a cluster of jagged rocks. The mountain man knelt to examine the ground and noticed strange patterns in the dirt, footprints that seemed too large and irregular for any animal he knew. They crisscrossed in directions that made no sense, as if the canyon itself had been walked by invisible beings. The Apache woman's eyes narrowed.
"You see what I mean," she said. "The spirits mark their presence when disturbed."
"You must move carefully and show respect, or the consequences will become more severe." As they continued along the trail, the mountain man began to notice subtle changes in his own senses. The air felt heavier, as though carrying whispers he could almost hear. Shadows flickered at the edge of his vision, disappearing when he turned his head. The hairs on the back of his neck stood on end, and a deep unease settled in his chest. By late afternoon, they came to a narrow ledge that overlooked a deep chasm. The view was breathtaking, but the mountain man could not enjoy it. The canyon seemed alive, its shadows shifting and twisting in ways that defied logic. He felt a strange pull toward the sacred crevice once more, a silent call from the place he had observed the day before. The Apache woman noticed his hesitation. "Do not look back," she warned. "Leave the past where it belongs. You have seen enough, and the spirits are not forgiving when reminded of intrusion." But curiosity and fear mingled in his chest, and he turned his head just slightly. For a moment he thought he saw movement within the shadows, as if figures were standing among the rocks, watching him. He blinked, and the vision was gone, leaving only silence and the wind. "That is enough," the Apache woman said firmly, sensing his doubt. "You cannot dwell on what is not meant for you. Walk forward, and do not let your mind wander. The canyon will test patience and respect." The mountain man nodded, forcing himself to focus on the trail ahead. But as the sun began to dip toward the horizon, strange events continued to unfold. Rocks shifted unexpectedly underfoot, startling him. Small stones rolled down the slope as if pushed by invisible hands. Shadows seemed to stretch unnaturally, and the wind carried sounds that resembled whispers, soft, fleeting, almost human. By evening, they found a sheltered spot to set up camp. The mountain man worked quickly to gather firewood, feeling the weight of unease pressing on him. The Apache woman arranged their supplies and prepared a simple meal, her movements deliberate and calm. She glanced at him, noting the tension in his posture. "The spirits remind us that curiosity has limits," she said gently. Even those with the best intentions can awaken forces that are not easily calmed. You must remember this lesson. Respect is more than obedience. It is understanding the balance between the living and those who came before. He nodded, the weight of her words settling deep in his chest. As the fire crackled and the canyon grew quiet, he felt a strange mixture of awe and fear. He realized that his journey was no longer just a search for discovery. It was a lesson in humility, patience, and understanding. Night fell, and the mountain man lay on his bedroll, staring up at the stars. The shadows of the canyon seemed to stretch and move, and he could hear faint whispers in the wind. His imagination tried to explain it away, but deep down, he knew the Apache woman had been right. The spirits of the canyon were real, and they had been disturbed. He thought of the sacred crevice, the bones, and the carvings. He understood now that the people who had lived and died here had left their mark with care, and that mark deserved respect. The mountain man felt a deep sense of humility, realizing that he had been lucky to witness the sight without causing further harm. The Apache woman's voice came to him once more, carried in his memory. The spirits test those who enter their domain. Only those who listen and respect will leave unscathed. You must carry this lesson with you, not just here, but in all your travels. The mountain man closed his eyes, letting the lesson sink in. He understood that the canyon was alive in a way he had never imagined, filled with memory, history, and unseen forces. His journey had taught him that discovery came with responsibility, and that respect was the key to understanding the world around him. As he drifted to sleep, the whispers of the canyon seemed to calm, as if acknowledging his understanding. He knew that tomorrow would bring more challenges, more tests of patience and respect, but he felt ready to face them. The lessons of the sacred crevice had left a mark on his soul, a reminder that curiosity must always be balanced with care, and that some mysteries are best approached with reverence. The mountain man slept under the stars, aware of the canyon's watchful presence, knowing that he had survived its warning and learned a lesson that would guide him for the rest of his life. The sun rose slowly over the canyon, spilling warm light across the jagged peaks and painting the valley below in shades of gold and red. The mountain man woke with a sense of calm he had not felt in days. The events of the past few mornings, the sacred crevice, the arranged bones, and the whispers of the canyon were still fresh in his mind, but he felt different now. He felt wiser, humbled, and more aware of the delicate balance between the living and the history that lived in the land. The Apache woman was already awake, her eyes scanning the horizon, as always. When she noticed him stirring, she offered a small nod, a silent acknowledgement of the lessons learned and the understanding gained. "Today we leave the canyon," she said quietly. "You have learned what was necessary. Let us continue before the shadows grow long." The mountain man nodded, packing his small belongings with care. He glanced once more at the direction of the sacred crevice, now distant but still alive in his thoughts. He remembered the arrangement of bones, the carvings in the rocks, and the careful placement of feathers, beads, and stones. He realized that the people who had lived here had left a story, a memory, preserved with patience, respect, and deep meaning. To witness it without disturbing it had been a privilege and a responsibility. They began walking along the narrow trail, moving carefully but steadily. The canyon had regained a kind of peace, though the mountain man could still sense the quiet power that lingered in the shadows. The birds had returned, their songs soft but cheerful, and the river below glistened in the sunlight. The canyon was alive, but it seemed content now, as if the spirits had accepted that respect had been shown. As they walked, the Apache woman shared stories of her people, of the lives that had been lived in harmony with the land. She spoke of hunts, of ceremonies, and of the lessons passed down through generations. The mountain man listened intently, realizing that these stories were as important as the artifacts and carvings he had seen. History was not just written on stone, it was carried in memory, in song, and in the careful steps of those who respected the world around them. By midday, they reached a small plateau that offered a wide view of the canyon below. The mountain man stopped, taking in the beauty of the land and reflecting on what he had learned.
"I understand now," he said quietly.
It is not just about discovery. It is about understanding the balance between the past and the present, between curiosity and respect.
The Apache woman smiled slightly, a rare softness in her expression.
Yes, she said, you have seen what many never will, and you have survived the tests of the canyon. But survival is not just about skill or courage. It is about understanding. The land, the spirits, and the memories of those who came before must be honored. He nodded, feeling a deep sense of gratitude. He had always thought of himself as a man who could face any challenge, but now he realized that true strength came from humility and respect. The canyon had tested him and he had passed, not because he had been brave, but because he had learned to listen, to observe, and to honor the boundaries set before him. As they continued along the trail, the mountain man noticed small details he had missed before. The delicate tracks of animals, the subtle changes in plant life, and the gentle curve of the rocks all seemed to tell a story. He realized that the canyon itself was alive with memory, and that every step he took was a part of that story. He felt connected, not just to the land, but to the people who had shaped it and the spirits who still lingered. By late afternoon, they reached the edge of the canyon, where the trail opened into a wider valley. The air was warm, and the sunlight bathed the rocks in a soft glow. The mountain man felt a sense of completion, as if a chapter of his life had come to a close. He turned to the Apache woman, who was already preparing to leave the canyon behind. "Thank you," he said, his voice sincere, "for guiding me, for warning me, and for teaching me what I needed to know." She nodded, her eyes reflecting the sunlight. "You did the work yourself," she said. "I only showed the way. Respect, understanding, and humility come from within. The land tested you, and you listened. That is all that matters." They walked together for a while in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. The mountain man felt a quiet peace settling over him, a sense of connection to the canyon and to the lessons he had learned. He realized that the experience had changed him, not just as a traveler or explorer, but as a human being. He had seen what many would never see, and he had learned to approach the world with respect and care. As the sun began to set, they reached the edge of the canyon, where the valley opened into a wide plain. The mountain man paused, looking back at the canyon one last time. Shadows stretched across the rocks, and the air seemed to shimmer with quiet energy. He felt a deep gratitude for the experience, and a renewed sense of responsibility to carry what he had learned into the world beyond. The Apache woman noticed his gaze and smiled. "The canyon will always be here," she said softly. "The stories will remain, and the spirits will watch. But you must carry their lesson with you, not just in memory, but in how you live your life." He nodded, understanding fully. He knew that the canyon had tested him, had shown him beauty, danger, and history, and had left him wiser for it. He had learned that curiosity must be tempered with respect, that knowledge comes with responsibility, and that some places and some stories are sacred. As they began the journey down the trail toward the valley, the mountain man felt a sense of closure. The whispers of the canyon were gone now, replaced by the natural sounds of the land, birds singing, the river flowing, and the wind rustling through the trees. He knew that he had passed the test, and that the lessons he had learned would guide him for the rest of his life. By nightfall, they reached a small settlement at the edge of the valley. The mountain man looked back toward the canyon, now distant in the moonlight. He felt a quiet reverence for the land and for the lessons he had learned there. The Apache woman turned to him, a gentle smile on her face. "Remember," she said, "what you have seen is a gift. Respect it, and it will guide you always." He nodded, feeling a deep sense of gratitude and understanding. The journey had been more than a physical challenge. It had been a journey of the mind, the heart, and the spirit. He realized that the canyon had changed him, had taught him lessons that could not be learned from maps or books, but only by walking carefully, observing, and listening. As he settled in for the night, the mountain man thought about the people who had lived in the canyon long ago, about the artifacts and carvings, and about the spirits that had watched over the land. He felt a connection to them, a recognition that their stories were now a part of him. He understood that true discovery was not about possession, but about understanding and respect. The Apache woman's words echoed in his mind once more. Respect, understanding, and humility come from within. The land tested you, and you listened. He smiled softly, knowing that he had passed that test. Under the stars, the mountain man closed his eyes and drifted to sleep, carrying the lessons of the canyon deep within him. He knew that wherever his journeys took him, the sacred crevice, the stories of the past, and the wisdom of the Apache woman would remain with him, guiding him toward understanding, respect, and a deeper connection to the world around him. The next morning he would continue his travels, but he would never forget what he had learned. That curiosity must be balanced with respect, that the past must be honored, and that some mysteries are sacred for a reason. The mountain man had faced the unknown, witnessed history preserved in shadow and stone, and emerged wiser, humbled, and forever changed.